I have a lot of thoughts today. My my my. I wanted to enter the kind of revolutionary portion of the conversation. You know, we've been sort of doing the the painful dismantling portion, and then I saw this great quote about a revolution and how, you know, we often consider a revolution to be something violent, but actually a revolution is something where you're just so focused on principles, the principles of what should be, that you are carried through what is. And my friend Amy, I just if anybody listens to my Diaries of an Indicted Woman, it should be on today. But my friend Amy said this, you know, really great thing to me about how she talked about that we have this notion in our culture. Gosh, it's hot. We have this notion in our culture that no, that's okay. That the things that are harmful, are, for example, thank you so much, are, for example, the like the internet, or social media, or those Republicans, or those damn liberals, whatever it is. We have this idea that those are the things that are harmful, and that what's harmful is our idea that those are the harmful things. And that really what it boils down to is whether or not in this time, in this culture, in this world, in this life, you have the capacity to have a certain kind of deployment of your attention. And that's the term she used, which I just thought was lovely. And, you know, I make it through a very compelling time of difficulty, where it could look like it's extraordinarily difficult if I didn't have extraordinary deployment of attention. And what she said was, oh, and basically I can see now, that's Om. The reason you have that attention is Om. It's like supercharged attention. And in a sense, it's also like a Teflon attention, because it just knocks away anything that isn't true, for the most part. Sometimes it gets in there and I just want to punch it, but for the most part, it deflects it. And then because it's so deeply, powerfully focused on a vision. And it has been an unwavering vision for 30 years now. From the time the moment that I knew that I was going to be doing something in this domain, I was teaching some women in words is what it was called. And I was a graduate teaching associate, and we had given out this questionnaire, and the questionnaire was, what do you want to know about sexuality? I repeat this often because it was just such a seminal moment for me. What do you want to know about sexuality? You know, it was all women in this class, so women could say whatever they wanted. And every single one, to a person, there were about 35 women in this class, came back with some version of what is wrong with me. What is wrong with me that I'm attracted to my cousin? What is wrong with me that I don't want to have sex? What is wrong with me that I can only masturbate and climax? What is wrong with me? And I realized that I was just looking at Sicilian jokes. I have somebody on Instagram who knows I'm Sicilian, so they send me Sicilian jokes. And then, so I thought, oh, I'll look up some Sicilian jokes to send back about Sicilian women. And it said, one of them said, I didn't mean to be sexy, but I was born Sicilian. So I say that to say that I was born without it. Angelina Jolie said Brad Pitt was born without a certain gene. She meant a feeling gene. But I was born without a certain gene, and that gene that I wasn't born with was shame around sexuality. So the world has always looked upside down, or very different, or very backward to me. I don't want to steal anybody's autistic thunder, but maybe I'm sexually autistic in that I just don't read the signals and signs about sexual shame that other people do. That has just never been part of my constitution. And I mean, I do believe in karma. I do believe in Buddhist return. And I do believe that I came here solely for this purpose, and that's probably why I was born without that element. And so, in fact, I was born with the opposite. I was born with what's called Vajra pride. So Vajra pride is the diamond-like pride of knowing who you are. And so that was always how I saw sexuality. It was always this sacred and precious gift given us. You know, I have aunts and sisters who, you know, who are ba-bam, ba-bam. And that was applauded in my world. And so it was never that. I didn't know to have that. And I just, in the memoir, I write about the experience of, you know, being in the women's studies courses, and there's, you know, these lines, and, you know, step over the line if A, step over the line if B, step over, you know, and these various step over the line if you've ever, and, you know, I had evered all of the things. I was just there standing alone at the end. And I couldn't understand two things. I couldn't understand why I was the only one, first of all. And I couldn't understand the anger that I faced afterward for being that far down the line. It didn't make any sense. And you know, I was in women's studies, and so there was very much the sisterhood cartel who wanted to inform me that in actuality, the sexual experiences I had had, what I considered life-bearing experiences, those were actually damaging. They rushed to me to let me know that those were damaging, and that they were there for me until I said, I don't think you need to be there for me. Perhaps I need to be there for you because I can show you something. And then they weren't there for me anymore. And they didn't want me there either, to be honest. And it's good because that's when I found Audre Lorde, and that's when I found Camille Paglia. And Camille wanted me, you know, her philosophy, she's a wild one. So, but I remember this experience of knowing that things were upside down or backward. And that I need you to know that experience has not changed to this day. What has changed, and this is what I was thinking about, is that I have 30 years under my belt of being in really being honored. And I don't say that like I've been honored with, like, really, truly, deeply, profoundly honored to be inside of women's hearts and psyches in a way where I get to hear what they don't say often in public. And so I'm in the back room with women when they're untangling themselves from all of the ideas and projections that they've taken on, and that for the most part that they've taken on in order to be good women, is the thing. And they don't understand why they're so bound up and tangled up, and why they feel progressively like there's a constriction that they can't breathe inside of. And so I've been in, you know, private with them, and you know, like when you see them cutting off the Coke can holders that end up on sea turtles, you know, I've been in that room cutting off the binds that tie women up. And I have discovered pretty much, again, to a woman, that that I'm not abnormal. I just wasn't given the memo that you're not supposed to admit it. That's what I discovered. And that, you know, I'm fortunate that I didn't know much of what I saw and felt was controversial, especially to the extent that it is. You know, in the Wall Street Journal interview, when she asked me if I had done anything wrong, I said, yeah, I misread the room. I did not anticipate that a woman's desire and agency would be so controversial, or that having your desire fulfilled would be controversial, because to me that is the most sacred expression of the feminine, which is the most sacred expression on the planet. So how could that be controversial? And but it is. And so then I was thinking about how to describe where I sit in the world, because I am fortunate that I sit inside of that diamond. I sit inside of that Vajra pride, is what they call it in Tibetan Buddhism. So I sit inside of that, and you know, and hope that every woman will turn toward her diamond, rather than outward toward public opinion, where she's buoyed about by everyone's ideas and projections about who she should be. Except for the thing is that your diamond is your sexuality. It's your sexual energies. They're are what are indestructible within each woman. They're what radiates from each woman. They're what magnetizes people to each woman. And you have to understand, or you don't have to, I do, the density of projections that are placed over that diamond. And so that any time you aim toward it, you have to have a strong deployment of attention to pierce through all of those projections to make it, and to stand up to the voices in your head that say, this really isn't that important, or nobody will love me, you know, or as I said about what they do on my Instagram, where I love the threat that men give me: no one would marry you. That's never been an issue. But that's, you know, that's like the great threat, is that nobody will marry you. You know, the various doubts, or the, you know, I'm harmful. How many women have felt sexual desire, and in the moment of experiencing it, it was an inconvenient desire, and felt that they were harmful as a result, or you know, I'm dirty, or all of those things. That's a woman's path, is having to penetrate those pieces in order to get to the diamond, so that all you do is shine out. That's the but it's the ultimate refuge. You know, it's really. And it's funny, because if you're actually in it, you really need refuge if you're a sexual woman. So I was thinking about what I know, and where the truth gets locked up. Because my experience, as I said, and you know, this is maybe 30,000 women at this point that I've been in contact with. And I'm sure there are, you know, women who feel differently, but 30,000 is enough for me in the you know, positive statistic category, who have a deep-seated sense that they have more power than almost anyone realizes, including them, or that they're here to bring something profound to the planet, or lo and behold, that their sexuality actually is the source of it all, and that if they would adhere to the injunctions of that desire, that, and I don't mean that like want, you know, I mean the pure dynamic desire of sexual energies, that, and to really have a fidelity to it, that it would lead them to wholeness. You know, these are the discoveries that I've made in back rooms, and that's why, you know, I have conviction, because I will meet the most timid or aggressive, or whatever you want to name. It's like every kitty in the place I've met, every kitty personality. And so you think, okay, maybe not with this one, maybe she'll be different. And it's just not the case. And, you know, it's buried. It's like it's like a buried treasure that exists in so many women. And so I have non-deviating vision. And then I was thinking, how would I describe that to people? And I think it's the place where, you know, I'm really interested in union therapy and the idea of the numinous, making the impossible possible. That's what I live to do in my life: make the impossible possible, make prisons into monasteries, make food insecure people fed in Harlem, you know, whatever that, turn the soil into carbon absorbing, so that we actually can can draw some of the heat from the planet into the lungs of the planet. These things are so simple. Making the impossible possible is actually deceptively simple. It's just that you have to be willing to see it. And so, and believe it. And that's really what the practice is. And that's what that deployment of attention is. That's why you need the most strong biological drive in the human body of human sexuality to fundamentally drive the attention, because you have to be able to pierce through mostly 99%. The only thing we're doing is piercing through doubt. That's the only thing we're doing on this planet in our awakening process. Doubt that you can, doubt that you deserve it, doubt that it's, possible, doubt that those people who are talking about it actually know what they're talking about. Doubt, and it's a barrage. And when I first was going to do my confirmation course, which was the first course that you do for Om practice, the woman said to me, be careful, the barbarians will come knocking at your door now that you've decided, to break out of the anti-sex cult. The barbarians will come knocking at your door, and they'll be your own barbarians, mind you. And she said, watch out, because they'll show up also in the form of desire. They won't just show up in doubts that you can. It'll be doubts that it's worth it. That's a big one, especially as you get further down the line and you're facing some real obstacles. Then is this even worth it? Why am I doing this? All these doubts. And so you have to have an attention that just keeps penetrating toward the vision. And so I have a vision. I have a vision for every woman to be free. That's really my vision. It's not that complex. And I'm fairly sure that I know the method. I know the way there. I've trekked back and forth enough times as a Sherpa, up and down. Well, it's actually down and up. That journey with women to know that it's possible, and to know what works. And I've tried enough methods to know what the absolute, without question, most effective method is. Unless you have something else, I don't know. I mean, I've tried everything from Tibetan singing bowls to I don't know, Kabbalah, because I wanted to know if there's something more effective, then I will, without question, do that. I don't have any. It would actually be a lot easier. It would be, there's nothing that could be more difficult than this being the path. You just walk around with this tin hat and a scarlet letter, and that's your uniform as the maestro. So I was thinking about how we all have this deep-seated notion that what it would be like if there were no war on the planet. Everyone thinks that theoretically that's possible, but then what arises in the next moment is, but that's not possible. Those people, it's always been like this, a whole series of things. But there's that moment when you glimpse what that would be like, and then, or we all have an idea of what it would be like if there were no food insecurity on the planet. And we all know it's possible. We all know that there's actually enough food on the planet for everyone to be eating, in a nutrient-rich way. We know that, but it isn't that way. And so we can get caught up in what isn't, and forget that doesn't mean it couldn't be. And so there's an art to living in the could be. And so I have this could be that I'm undeviating from, of what it looks like for a woman to live free. So what does that mean for a woman to live free? And, I talk a lot about freedom from and freedom to. Freedom from any kind of threat. Freedom from any kind of threat. Freedom from inequity. Freedom from suffering. And then freedom to. And for me, freedom to is very simple. It is freedom to have uncontrived expression in the world. And when the power of uncontrived expression is iterative, because you get more powerful the more you do it. And you know, the science, in fact, oh, by the way, our journals just were accepted, and you know, we have 1,500 journals of practice, and they are proven now to be scientifically to be a practice that has you enter the mystical state. And so I think that's on my Instagram, that's around. But so see, and I knew that that was true. That was self-evident to me when I first started. And you know, I really am, so 31, 26 years later, it's now, you know, science catches up. And so, but I know that there is the potential for every woman. And I say this because I think mathematically it's how it has to go. If I thought, you know, I wouldn't mind if it were every man either, but I think you have to get every woman free in order to have every man be free. I think that's how it has to start. I think that, you know, I'm very clear that until women go through the rite of passage, and this is a sexual rite of passage from girl to woman, you will always have men who are unclear on direction, because the signal of call will always be confusing. And you just, it has to happen this way, period, especially if you want to subdue greed, hatred, and delusion. So, you know, for me, I just followed the route, followed it all the way down to what has to happen to end suffering in the world. And that's what has to happen. So then every single woman free. And if you take a minute and you just imagine that, you know, you just, I mean, and there are little things too, like you imagine a woman walking through a parking lot and not having any sense of contraction in her body or fear about her environment, or you, and by the way, I do want to say that that can happen externally or internally, but that's one of the more controversial things that I say. But you imagine, you know, a woman knowing without question that if she expresses herself sexually, that she won't be harmed. Imagine that. Imagine if she knew that she could handle herself and take care of herself in that way, that she had the capacity to say yes and the capacity to say no fully at her fingertips, that she had the power in any situation, in any sense of duress, to get up and walk out of the room, that she had the power to, if she wanted more, to ask for it, if she wanted it differently, to communicate that she knew that she was the driver of the experience. I mean, that would just be crazy. And then imagine how that would translate into the world if in that most vulnerable place that exists inside of a woman's being, which also happens to be the strongest place as well, if she had the capacity to then carry that into the world. How different if you had full facility of your ability to communicate, to express, to say yes, to say no. If in that most, you know, in the same way that they train in high altitude locations, and then you come down, and when you come down, it's like, it's a lot different. It's easy. So if you could express in that location, then what would happen just in the everyday world where you don't know what to say to your husband, or you don't know how to deal with your kids, and you had strength in that location. And so this picture of this world of free women is, you know, it's what has pulled me through the past 30 years, through, as they say in Buddhism, the slings and arrows of that time, and they exist for sure. And then also, but also like the abyss of silent rage that happens when you know when you know that you're right, you know you actually have the jewel, and this is the thing that's denigrated or put down or dismissed or called indulgent, and you know, and you begin to pick up evidence, right? You have the science, but that's not quite enough. You have actually proof. You have stories, whatever it is. That's not quite enough. And why is it not quite enough? Because it's never going to be enough. It just isn't. It isn't, because it's non-linear in that way. It's not that it can be proven factually. John McWhorter, who is a brilliant linguist and African-American writer, talks about what happened in the psyche of the African-American community when all of a sudden this religiosity entered into politics. And so it was no longer that you could logically argue what happened or what was happening. It was that there was, all religious mind keeps a portion of the mind that cannot be touched by any kind of logic or facts or anything of that nature. That's the nature of it. And he said that that's really what began to happen in such a way that took people off the rails. I would say the same exact thing happened for women, where you could not give us the facts. You couldn't say you're actually achieving economic parity at this point. You couldn't say 55% of all women are now heading up managerial positions. You couldn't say that more women are getting PhDs than men. You couldn't say more men are committing suicide than, at double the rates of women. There was this entrenched idea of social advantage that was holding everything. And so you couldn't deviate from that. There's this portion here where we had to keep this identity held, and that's just going to happen until we begin to see different images, until we begin to reframe it. And so, I've been sitting here with just watching things. We started with Bonnie Blue, and that to me is just the most upside down thing. That to me is just a really elegant and generous expression of a woman sharing what she, her quote is so great. It's so pleasurable. Why would I keep it to myself? That's just such an incredible quote. So then you look at this. So do we have the image, Matt? So this is Bianca Censori. I don't know if you know who she is. She's Kanye, who is an arbiter of taste for many, but it's his wife, and she's on the red carpet. And let me see. So this was, the same way that Bonnie Blue had people go batshit crazy. This image had people go crazy. And it's funny, there was once this video of Trump, and it was, I couldn't believe it actually came out, but it was where he was holding a laser like to the media, and they were cats. And so they just kept following it wherever he sent it. It was very sharp about, okay, some of these stories are put there deliberately to inflame. Why? And Steve Bannon says, if you inflame, you put out 5 stories, all of a sudden the media doesn't know what to do and they just shut down. And so this, to my mind, is what Kanye is doing, but he's using our, pardon? Oh, okay, but he's using our own judgment in order to do it, and he's playing on it. And so what happened was, what's interesting is the people who went the craziest are women. And I read several diatribes on the fact that this poor woman is being, held hostage by this man. And my question is always, when you see something like that, what would you have to believe about women to believe that? She's a mouthy Italian woman, or Australian, I think too, but she who, from my understanding, she was an architect or a designer. She's a smart, capable woman. So then the fact that she is choosing to dress in a very provocative way, the presumption is always that he's making her. There you go. and here's what I think. This is my my political. So one of the political, that's good. The commentaries. Oh, she's so lovely. One of the political commentaries that I read was, this is obviously a BDSM relationship, and I'm like, if it is, that's hot, but this is, and he is forcing her into what they call subspace, where she can't make a decision out in public, and you can tell by the way her eyes are, and you know, it's funny. It's you'd really have to genuinely believe that women are an inferior sex to believe that, and then you would have to believe that no woman in her right mind would ever want to be so generous as to demonstrate such walking beauty on the planet. Like, that is Venus. I mean, that was perfection. So then my thought is, I think some ladies are jealous. I think I think it's the same way that, you know, there was a book in my day, which has a totally different meaning at this point, but fat is a feminist issue. Fat is a feminist issue, and it was talking about how, you know, anorexia. Because during I was in college in in the 90s, early 90s, and so bulimia was the big thing. Now it's trauma. Back then it was bulimia. Bulimia and anorexia, food stuff. It was the first time women were talking about food. We were talking about taking up space, you know, take up your space and get fat. And I was not, you know, one of our better periods, but the idea, you know, and then all of these studies were done about how women who run at a caloric deficit, there's two that were very interesting. Women who run at a caloric deficit spend something like 80% of their ambient attention focusing on their bodies. Can you imagine how that takes a woman out of the game? That's first. The second is they put men on a 1,200 calorie diet, which was what many women just live on normally. And the men had such breakdowns. They were crying and they had to feed the men because they were causing harm, putting them in this experience. And that's where women lived regularly. But what I'm pointing to is one of the studies. There is a great book called Appetites, and the woman who actually passed, I think her name is Judith Knopf, but something of the, we'll get it online. But she passed from anorexia, but she was writing about her recovery from anorexia, and she wrote one of the most beautiful expressions of what it was like to hate every single person who was eating, and to begrudge them that food because she could only have, you know, 5 small pieces of cereal a day or something unbelievable. And that's really, I think, how we are with sexual women. It is only it's culturally acceptable, isn't it? Where so you know, I happen to love Megyn Kelly for the most part. I don't love her takes on women because it's always women should be intelligent and not sexual, as if they're not the same thing. And she's just she's so harsh on these women, and I wish that we all knew the sources of our judgment, and you know, to my mind, this is it's Bianca and Bonnie. Apparently B is a big name if you want to be sexual in the world. To my mind, they're just an exquisite demonstration of courage to do what we're here to do on the planet. And really, this goes back to our science. Dr. Greg Siegel and Nikki Prowse did some profound science on the fact that in Om, you have arousal. When you have arousal, you break through the valence of good and bad. Whoa, when you break through the valence of good and bad, you can rewrite your experience, which happens to be the premier practice that you can do for trauma. Up until now, it's been psychedelics, but you know, that's Om is 15 minutes. Thank you very much. And you don't have to go to Peru to rewrite your story. And you can do it on a daily basis, and you can do it without blowing your own mind. You can just progressively open it and write it. And that's how you really gain a certain amount of autonomy and freedom. That's really what freedom is, when you get to choose the connotations and denotations that you give to your own experience. That's what power is. You know, we disempower ourselves with the ways that we describe to ourselves the experiences we've had. And so that, you know, really, if you look at the fundamentals of trauma, they have to do with rumination of a pre-written story. That's the description that every, you know, trauma diagnosis will have. So I had this picture of every woman being free. And I thought I would just read, if I have it today. No. Huh? No, what I had you print, maybe we don't have it. Oh, maybe I won't. But I was going to read from the OM I did before my demo. And so, but I can talk about it because I was there. So how it went was, you know, I had studied for many years with, you know, various groups, and really I ended up studying with Ray. And I was getting ready to do what's called a demonstration of a woman in orgasm. This is actually why I'm considered a menace to society, according to some folks, because I do these, I present these for people, and I present them because that is where I was hit by the wave that I couldn't outrun. Every woman can outrun her sexuality until she's hit with a certain wave that resets something inside of you, where you realize this is always how it was supposed to be. This is it. So in my first, you know, I had my first home. Great, amazing, and then nothing. And then I went to my first demo. And so I'll describe the demo for you. And that is, I was in San Francisco at this time. You know, remember, I'm a feminist. I'm a hardcore. Used to go to Take Back the Night thank you, darling. I used to go to Take Back the Night for women. You know, I was on the front lines of women's health. I was very hardcore. I wouldn't wear my top. I had smaller breasts back then, but you know, I was just out there with all my sisters and dykes on bikes, and somebody invited me. This guy who had sleeve tattoos, and he had read Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. So he qualified, and so he invited me to an event. And I was in San Francisco, so events were weird. You know, you just could expect to go to something weird. It was it's the origin of Burning Man. So you know, so I went to this event, and it was in the Richmond in San Francisco. Beautiful room, beautiful oak wood floors, votive candles against the walls. In the center of the room, though, there were about 30 seats, and we were all in seats. In the center of the room was a table, like a massage table with a sheet on it. And when we sat down, and you know, I didn't even really know this guy, but I kind of clung to him because it was such a strange, well, we're going to watch somebody get massaged. I don't know. And so this woman walks in, and the woman is beautiful beyond. There's this description I heard once of Marilyn Monroe walking down the street. Nobody's paying attention to her. And she said, "Do you want me to become her?" to her friend. She lights up, and people start swarming in her direction. Whatever that was, this woman had, where she wasn't necessarily conventionally beautiful, but she was mesmerizing, and she was in a gold copper robe. And then this sort of, I don't know, swarthy guy comes out, and oh God, I don't know about him, you know, and I, you know, because I'm a feminist at the time, like, I don't know. And so the woman comes out, and she gets out on the table, and she's on the table, and then there are two women on either side of her who take her robe, and she lies down, and then he's moves toward the table, and I'm looking at my what are we doing here? This is super, like that. There's like a Tom Cruise movie where they all wear masks. It was like that kind of feeling. And so then the guy, there's a jar, apparently there's lube in there, and so he's standing over her, and he describes, oh, she, look at her face, and you look at her face and she's already beautiful, and he didn't notice her after. Okay, and he said, and notice it, you may notice rippling, and you may notice it, the signifiers of orgasm. Okay. So he puts his thumb at her introitus, that's the area where if you were going to have sex, you'd enter. And then he puts his hand over her and he starts stroking her clitoris, differently from how I would know clitoris stroking to be, which would be to immediately bring you to climax. But there's a way that he's doing it that's much more like a musician. And I'm in the experience. No, I'm not in the experience. I'm definitely not in the experience is what's happening. I'm in judgment. And I have determined this is where my Megyn Kelly moment. I love you, Megyn. But this is my moment because I had determined that these people weren't smart enough. That's to not be doing this. That if actually they were, academicians like me, they wouldn't be doing this. They wouldn't be humiliating themselves. These women wouldn't be exposing themselves. And I'm just, oh, it's great. I'm ready to write my thesis on it. And then all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I notice that everyone is moving their head in unison. And there's something silent in the room. And then it hits me. This woman isn't even moving. And all of us are being moved by her. Every single one of us was being moved together and connected because of this woman's vulnerability. So in that moment, it hit me, oh, there's a different kind of power. Everything I've known power to be is not this. And this is more, this is more subtle and deadly without question. So then I go back into my judgment and I'm considering my outfit and my stomach, whatever. And I'm kind of judging it and deciding if I'm going to make out with the guy later. And then it breaks in again. And what struck me in that moment, and this is where I was unalterably changed, is how innocent this is. How innocent this is, and how much judgment I had around any kind of sexuality, that it was dirty, that anybody who did it was dirty, and that this was actually the most innocent thing in so many ways I had ever seen. It was virginal. There wasn't anything seedy about it or dirty. And then I had to look at, oh, that's what I do to it. This is pure. All of the dirtiness comes from the ideas that I've had and put on it. So it's this moment of just almost embarrassment at something so beautiful, at being in the face of something so beautiful that I had spent my entire life judging. And then I go back into my sort of whatever judgment, and I'm really judging the guy now, and he's taking advantage of her and the whole thing. What everyone has written about Kanye and his wife, and he just needs to step down. And then all of a sudden I notice, wait, this man is perfectly attuned to her. Wait a minute, I think she's guiding him. It's not that he's doing anything to her. He's actually just moving with what's coming out of her. I remember my entire idea about man-woman relationships, everything just shifted immediately in that moment. This idea that you always had to be fighting the man. And really all she did was open and pure vulnerability. And he was totally under her influence in the most positive way that both were affected. And then, and then it kind of closed up. And then I drank a lot of wine. And a whole other set of experiences happened. And I did, but that's actually what's funny is I drank a lot of in that experience, I felt something. I felt a kind of arousal. And arousal for me always felt dangerous because something that was in my control, something that was out of my control was happening to my body. And as we started with this series, the quote from Erica Jong, in my time, that's her time. So she really is the first real feminist woman to write about sexual liberation. Brilliant writer, Fear Flying. So she said, in my time, the word around sexuality and women, in my time, it was liberation. But in my daughter's time, it's control. And I was right on the edge of that, in between the ideas being about liberation and control, but definitely the idea that I would ever want to be out of control, much less out of control in public, just brought up an instant burn of shame. And then to see this woman so profoundly out of control, where you could see her stomach ridging, where when she sat up, you could see that her parasympathetic nervous system had been activated, and she had, what's called a pregnancy mask that you get. By the way, orgasm is there to make you look how you look when you wear makeup. Makeup is there to be a simulation of orgasm because your cheeks flush, a light layer of perspiration, your lips swell, all of these things. And so when she sat back up, as if she weren't already pre-existing radiance, there she was, just so beautiful. And that's when I said, this is how every woman to feel I've changed that to every woman who wants to. But in that moment, I wanted every woman to know that experience, because for me, what had been the most deep source of shame was revealed to be the most precious source of power. And I couldn't imagine that happening in my own lifetime, especially without fight, which was the only form of feminism that I knew. Fight and take down and all of those things. That's what I knew feminism to be. And then that it could be actually rooted in actual genuine, that it would start at women's power, was inconceivable, that you could start there and then build a life from that. So I thought I would do a quick read, I hope, of this is just part of yeah. Oh, I have my Italian jokes. What's worse than a male chauvinist pig? A woman who won't do what she's told. Ha ha ha. I don't know. I don't know why I have this one in here. Okay, so yeah, this is pretty quick, and this is just this is right before I do my own demo. So I'd studied I think it was like 6 or 7 years at this point. I'm really bad with numbers. I have to see me looking at Courtney Leposki because she knows my timeline. I don't know any of the days. Okay, I had studied for about 6 or 7 years, and which meant approximately 4 hours of practice every day for the last 3 or 4 years. Prior to that, a minimum of having 5 ohms a day. And so I was pretty steeped in it. For a woman who wanted to be a nun, I got my experience. And so this is a few days. This is a few days before the demo where I'm on the table. And here we go. What I felt the day before was so much bigger. It happened to be in the quiet of Ray's bedroom, no ritual, no audience. I'm in the middle of an ordinary session. Something is knocking around inside of me, but it feels different. I look at the crystals hanging by the window, but instead of cheesy, the rainbows come from them are the most beautiful thing I've seen. They dance and play across my body. The softness of Ray's powder white skin is exquisite. The tan of my skin is the sun's radiance. The moment feels like a prism, a doorway into the opening of time and space. as though the world I saw before was a faded photograph, and now I am seeing the full saturation of color, vibrancy, and life. I feel something knocking around inside of me still, and then it comes into view, the ball and chain of life's conditions on being female. It's right where my uterus is. Every pretense, every criticism, every insecurity, all my posturing, grasping, and competitiveness. The feeling that my sex, my body, my clitoris are the source of all of my difficulties. In that moment, I see what I think are my difficulties as a woman are actually my gateways to freedom. Attention explodes and releases the blockage in the climax of dimension, not a climax limited by time. And then I hear the voice. I am a free woman. Every woman has a spot on her clitoris, and when you stroke that spot, a doorway to consciousness opens. All restlessness, irritation, discontent comes from not being on this spot. The spot is similar to having the lights turned on. Every part of me can see, hear, sense the aliveness of everything. I am a woman broken open to show who this Nicole is to become. The lights are on, hearing is on, seeing is on. This opening is the vivification of everything. It happens because I find a way to let go. Losing control is anathema to everything I think is important. In my mind, there is no way to lose control and be the best, exceptional, impressive. The only way I know to do that is through the kind of grim rigor driven by the thought, I am not lovable. Instead, I put that aside and feel this stroke. It is a glimmer of truth that will carry me for years. It's the moment I see that sexuality is neither for pleasure nor violation. It is for liberation. The process is sometimes wrathful, sometimes peaceful, sometimes powerful, but it is always an act of walking a tightrope, perfect balance, possessed, absorbed attention. My body tells me that this is it. There's no turning back. It tells me sweetly, gently, that I'll be entering a new space where my senses will guide me and my life will never be the same. The exhale that spreads across my body feels like it will roll past the bed, out the window, and over the highways, like tule fog billowing across the entire city. I let go. I let the wild river of sensation take me where it wants to. The full-on embrace of feeling so complete, so beyond what I've ever felt. This is true orgasm, the outcome of this practice. This opening has been a slow, steady crawl over the years, doorways creaking, doorways ajar, leading to an infinite hallway of more doorways, grabbing the transmuting anger, grief, jealousy, obsession to fuel the unfolding of love. But after that afternoon in Ray's bedroom, with rainbows dancing across my body, I opened the door that I could never close again. In my mind's eye, I see my sexuality as a ball and chain dragging me down with endless conditions. The chain releases. The ball falls away. I hear the quiet, still voice inside me say, I am a free woman. I am home. Okay, so I think that's a talk. Thank you.
We'll take a couple reflections from online. You can raise your virtual hand and I will call on you. We'll start with Leah. We can't hear you, Leah. Are you
unmuted and muted? And anyway, I'm here now. Thank you for your talk so much. I'm just kind of reeling and soaked in the imagery and transmission that you just gave us from that really beautiful journal. I think that's a really good mantra. And then I just had this reflection that like I just remember being asked in like high school, like who's like a role model for you, you know, and I couldn't think of anyone in public eye or like, and I was like Eleanor Roosevelt. I don't know. She's a strong woman, you know, who like held her own in a certain way. So I went with that. But like, she wasn't very like, you know, feminine in a certain way. It's like, oh, there's something, you know, and I just want to say like to the community, like it's really turned on women. I like when I came to and I when it came to One Taste events, I was like, oh, like these women I actually genuinely look up to. And they have something that I aspire to genuinely, and it included the feminine. And I think that's why it was so hard to find some place that felt genuine to like look up to, or not up to, but like have a goalpost, like, oh, they have something genuine that I want. And so yeah, I just wanted to reflect that to you and to all the women that like what we're doing is so important and that we are creating a feminine pole, you know, that people can actually refer to and as a place that as reference point for their own evolution. So that's what I wanted to say.
I like that. I just want to say, so the woman who was on the table was in a community with other women, and one of those other women was talking, we were talking, and one of the things she said to me is that, you know, in the everyday world, people have heroes who are over there who they don't think they could ever be like, but in sort of a woman's world, these women who have something that you want to have, that you know you can have, is something that's possible. So yeah, I feel the same way. That's what I'm saying.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
We'll go to Kevin online.
Hi, that was a beautiful talk and just kind of taking in.
Kevin,
I know. You're like, what?
This is my attorney. He's not my attorney anymore. He was, but and I haven't seen him in a while, and so I get to see his face for the first time after I read about having my genital stroke. Go ahead.
It's fun. Legal is fun around here. Yeah, just watching the whole scene there, like you and the sort of the way you express yourself, the way you dress, and then just the scene around you, and like everything is so resonant and like ordered in a certain way, and then it's happening in the middle of this like crazy brush fire, and that you kind of can create that beauty and order in the center of all that is very inspiring.
Oh, Kevin.
And we'll end with Carly from Instagram, who said, so grateful to be here for this talk. I am always so nourished by these talks, affirmed in my knowing and fortified on my path. Endlessly grateful for Nicole and her body of works.
Ah, Carly. It's nice to meet you. Okay.